Some of the things that we've noticed, first, if you just maybe put these into two different buckets. So how big of an independent contractor firm are you potentially working with? Like Obeo, we have a national network of photographers. We're in every major metro and a lot of outlying areas as well.
They're the people we go to hire the best photographers out there. It's like the Uber of photography, and they bring in 3D tours, all that good stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about independent contractors, the best practices so that when you hire them, they make you look great instead of, getting fired and making you look bad. By the way, we had one of those experiences 2 weeks ago, not knowing we were going to do this, Grant.
Yeah.
We hired somebody and they just, dude, they did a terrible job. They did. We didn't go through you, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Let's make sure we're clear on that.
We're clear. It was for photography though. And our usual guy, which we talked about last time, our usual guy wasn't around. And my agent decided to go out to somebody else. And we requested a 3D tour as well. Well, the 3D tour was so grainy, and this is a luxury property. The owner's like, "What is this crap? What is this? We're actually going to put this up." And we're like, "No, not really. It was just a test."
Not really.
Well, dude, this is so important because the people we hire to help us create the marketing or just help us in the process of closing a transaction, opening a transaction, just everyone that's involved is a reflection of who we are in this business. And it could leave a bad taste in people's mouths because it's all about feeling. I don't know who said the quote, but it's all about how you make people feel, right?
Totally.
And to me, that's important, man. So you guys have a lot of experience in this, 20 years with Obeo. Let's start with what you've noticed over the last 20 years when it comes to hiring an independent contractor.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years and thousands of on our side, photographers, right? I mean, these guys are all independent. They're not W-2. They're an independent contractor by definition, right? Just to make sure we're all on the same page. Is somebody that's not a W-2 employee of a company. They work like an Uber driver, right? They're a 1099 type person. And, we've had thousands of these over the last 20 years. The laws have changed. Insurance requirements have changed. There's a lot that goes into how do you vet a photographer that has changed over 20 years. For example, especially when you're going into a listing, into a person's home, I'll tell you, one of the biggest aha moments that we had just 5 years ago was understanding the real concern from a realtor who asked us a really good question. She said, "Do you do background checks on your photographers?"
Ooh.
And I thought, well, yes, we do. And thankfully we do. But I was intrigued because she said the reason why she was asking, she said, I'm a single person on site on a listing. I need to make sure it's safe. And that safety aspect, that alone, I'll tell you, that has transformed from 20 years ago to 5 years ago in a massive way. A lot more people are concerned because, there's several instances, right? And they pop up here and there, and they're the worst of the worst experiences, but you don't want to go there. And so that's one aspect to how do you vet a independent contractor, and just generally how the landscape has changed over 20 years.
Dude, I think it starts with the agent or the broker or the team leader, whoever is in the process of hiring, is just to remember that the people that we're helping, this is going to be the largest sale of their life, right? And on the other end, the largest purchase of their life. Don't tell me that Jeff Bezos has purchased something for more than $150 million, right? He didn't. So this is at all levels, luxury or not, this is going to be the biggest purchase and probably the biggest sale of anyone's life all across the board. So you have to pay attention to who you hire, because it's a reflection on you and your business, whether or not somebody will use you again. And this is why I think most of us stick to, when we find somebody, right, like you guys, we stick to it, because you, in your case, it's easier than what we've seen out there, because you have kind of like a checklist, right? And before you hire, you're like, oh, they meet these, this is the criteria, you met it all, right? And you're continually getting educated and doing better. It's not always that easy, man, because when we go to a home inspector, like, it's not like they're all built the same, or somebody's actually going out there and checking, yep, got that, got that, got that. How do we look out for any setbacks, any don'ts that we shouldn't be doing, right? Or should be doing?
Yeah. So something to think about when you look at whoever it is. And home inspector is a great example, Tristan, because they are a small, oftentimes a small mom and pop shop, right? Maybe one or two people involved there. And as an agent, you do want to make sure you vet them appropriately, because they do reflect on your image. And so some of the things that we've noticed, first, if you just maybe put these into two different buckets. So how big of an independent contractor firm are you potentially working with? Like Obeo, we have a national network of photographers. We're in every major metro and a lot of outlying areas as well.
Yep.
And so you need to make sure, look, if you're investigating a company like Obeo, then ask some of the questions of how do they vet their 1099 employees or 1099 contractors. What are the things they're vetting, and ask, I mean, we can go through a few of those, but the other bucket are the really small mom and pops, but now you're dealing with them directly. A lot of the same questions still apply. A lot of the same questions apply. You just need to go direct to them.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. So let's go through some of those questions, because I don't want people listening in that really want to take care of their reputation. I don't want them to miss anything along those lines. Let's start with what you guys do first, right? That we can use, that can then say, okay, when I'm hiring this person, escrow, we're in an escrow state, title, home inspector, plumber, electrician, everything, right? What should I be looking for here that we can bring from Obeo to the other side?
Yeah, perfect. So very first thing to vet, if this contractor is going to go on site at all, you have to make sure they've got a clean background check. That is a first. Before they could tell you how good they are, they can even give you sample work, whatever. None of that matters if they don't have a clean background check. So they can either supply you one, or there's plenty of services that you can get a free background check or for a minimal fee.
Do you guys recommend any of them?
The one that we use is Checker. Checker, CHECKR, is a great background service that we use. There's several of them out there, and there's different types of background checks. The things that you want to make sure of on a background check are if there's any theft, right? Some of the big ones, right? Have they had any?
Well, I think that's the number one. I mean, you're gonna let them into a house, right?
You'd be surprised, dude. Like it's funny. Like, and we have a lot of people. Yeah. Another interesting thing is driving record is an interesting one. And every state's different about this, but when you hire an independent contractor, you do assume some risk when they are traveling from the location that they were at to the location that they are going to fulfill your job. And so you just have to navigate that a bit. Not legal advice, right? That's a big disclaimer here, but there is plenty of things in that bucket on the liability side that you should look into, which would be my second point. After you do the background check, and if they're good, ask them what their insurance coverage is. And just make sure that is within what you think is reason. Like on the photographer side, a minimum of $1 million general liability insurance is, and a lot of independent contractors, if they're legitimate, will have these policies. And so make sure they have that, make sure they have an automotive liability policy because of the risk I was just talking about.
That's interesting. I would have never thought to do that.
Yeah, see, this is why we talk, Tristan, like 20 years, thousands of photographers. There's a lot to this. And some of these are like the do's and don'ts, right? You just don't know until you find out certain things. So then once you get past that point, a couple other things that you want to pay attention to, and I'll use photography maybe as a good example. Because we require a certain standard of quality, then for us, really important is verifying what equipment they are using to produce that quality. And dude, we had a photographer, I'll never forget this. He, in our application process, you will say what kind of equipment you have. First, like the brands, is it a Canon or a Sony, or we literally had this photographer apply and say that they were shooting with a Honda.
What the hell's that?
A car, I guess. I mean,
shooting with a
Honda?
I think they
no
misread
idea.
the question too. So what are you shooting with? Well, I'm getting there with a Honda.
So if quality is a factor, make sure you're vetting the equipment. And, and even outside of photography, are you using a laser?
Actually, that makes a lot of sense, dude. If we're looking at a home inspector, right? Because we've had the same home inspector for a while. They're always coming up with new gadgets to simplify their lives and to make it more accurate, right? So
yeah,
like to go under a crawl space, they've got this cool little remote control vehicle with a camera.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So I got background check, which is important. Equipment, I think that's important. But how do we figure out how adequate they are at their job? Do we just go based on reviews on this end, or what do we do?
Yeah, so this is where we introduce, as a general rule, you have, we call it trust but verify. So give me a sample of your website, and you can go look at website stuff all day long, but a lot of people put on their website the best of the best, right? Like, and sometimes you won't ever get that all the time. So then you verify. Now we verify by having a photographer upload, like go through an actual training process and capture photos where according to the specifications that we've given to them. And then we can really easily tell how good they are at listening to instructions, how good they are at following instructions, how good they are at communicating. Like, you can give a sample test, which outside of photography, if I was going to recommend anything for agents, if you're looking at doing this with any of your other vendors, just say, be the user. In other words, say, I'll place an order for myself. I just want to see how it goes. Like, I want to understand your process. I want to understand how that works.
That makes sense. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. So let's say we get the samples, right? Or we get the reviews if we need to. What other things do you guys do that helps us identify quality versus maybe below average?
Yeah. So a couple of the other pillars that we look at. When you look at in this onion of quality, it depends on where you go, how deep you pull the peels back on the onion. Quality and reliability kind of go hand in hand. Okay, so if you have high quality of a product per se, does that mean that you were late to the appointment? Does that mean that you were rude to the customer when you were on site? Does that mean that you were late in delivering the final product or service? If all of those were nasty, doesn't really matter what the quality was at the end of the day. So you have to link quality and reliability together when dealing with a independent contractor. And so some of the questions that we would recommend asking to help vet that out initially are, do you have a service level agreement? And that is something that industry standard in independent contractors, how you can help manage this process is, if they don't know what a service level agreement is, that might be okay, right? Not everybody thinks in those terms,
True.
but it's a pretty quick hop and a skip to help them understand what it is. And ultimately it's like bumpers on the expectations. You know, when you're bowling, you can gutter ball all day long, but if you put little bumpers on the side, then that gives you some safe zone and controls a little bit of the relationship. We're not always going to be perfect, but when you manage the all of the outliers appropriately, then you're better protected and you don't have a nasty experience like the one you were talking about earlier with a photographer.
Yeah, that sucks, bro. I mean,
It does.
I'm assuming it was the equipment, right?
Yeah,
So,
it could have been. It could have been.
super grainy upload on the 3D tour. I'm like,
Yeah, nasty.
whatever.
Nasty.
It happens. All right. Well, at least it doesn't happen with you guys.
No, no, but that's part of it, right? Like, so identifying quality and linking that with reliability is a huge aspect, because you should be finding out what is your response time. How do you prefer to communicate? And when it gets to some of the particulars, like I think generally speaking, most people are pretty good at responding when there's business on the table. Where it gets a little bit tricky is, how do you know when what you need to talk to me about is urgent or not? And so we have some escalation techniques that we've used that I think are pretty helpful.
All right.
One of those, if you have something that you need, like, well, I'll just break it down this way. From an escalation perspective, you can always talk to an independent contractor by using 4 different codes. One is IU. That's like, this is important and urgent. This is like, the house is on fire. I need you now, right? And so if you're sending a text, just IU dash whatever the message is, as long as you've communicated this code to your vendor, then they should get, oh, IU, I need to get back with them ASAP, right? Another one is IN. It's important, but not urgent. So it needs to be on your radar, but it doesn't have to be right this second. The third one would be NU. It's not important per se, but it is urgent. It has to be done ASAP, right? And then the fourth one is, it's not important, it's not urgent, it's NN. And therefore just, you know, it's more FYI. So we use those techniques to help. I mean, how do you, it's communication, man. It's like, how do you actually communicate with me? And how do I know when you're urgent, should be my urgent?
Well, dude, I think for a company like yours, you've already put that in place. So you've trained your people that you work with, those independent contractors, well. Yeah. But I can't be like, yo, home inspector, before we start, let me go. This is how I need an NN and a this and a that. And so if I text you this is gonna work this way. So that's the sucky part, right? There are no companies like yours outside of the photography, 3D tour, virtual tour, all that good stuff. I can't do that with a home inspector or that. So I do see what you mean though. We should lay the groundwork for communication from the very beginning. And anytime there's a lack of communication, I think that should be a red flag, because again, it's a reflection on us. Yeah. If we get to them and be like, hey, the seller's like, no, or this isn't good. Like I've been in the business for 17 years, and you better believe I've had bad escrow officers, bad title executives, messed up pictures, everything you can imagine, inspector. It's all gone wrong at some point. And it's all a reflection of me, because guess who gave them the choice of who to use, right? I gave them 3. They were my choices.
And that's where I was just talking with a broker just yesterday about, in fact, I didn't know that we had a mutual connection. I threw out a name. And he was the one that said, oh, Matt, are you kidding? Dude, Matt is like one of the best human beings of all time. Such a stud, willing to go the extra mile, does all this stuff for us. And I took that as one of many conversations that should be happening about you as an agent when a third party vendor who you work with talks about you, right? Like that would be a home run. When you've managed expectations appropriately, And going to what you know, and you've said many times before, everybody you work with on your team is an extension of you. They
That's
reflect
it.
100% directly on you. And if you manage these things right, have the right bumpers in place, get the right communication channels, establish codes if you want to or not. And I know plenty of agents that do, and
I
they're
love
not
that.
working with companies like us per se,
Well,
but
it's easier with yours, dude.
it's easy for ours because we do it,
Yeah.
right? And we've taken a lot of that burden off, frankly. You don't have to think about it. You just know and can trust when you order photography with us, it's going to be done. But having the same thought process on your system and process with your home inspector or your appraiser or whatever, like that's not a bad thing, to just make sure you're operating your business with certain standards. And that is a great reflection. Like they will completely be willing to share how you work, because I guarantee you're going to be different. Doing this will make you different in a great way from other people.
Well, talking about the difference part, here's what I want to go deeper on here because we've got about 8 minutes or so.
Yeah.
How can we use these independent contractor relations or relationships to help grow our influence among the people that we're sending them to, or even amongst their people, so that, I mean, dude, so I can get more business at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
How can I do that? How have you seen that work?
It's like most we're growing businesses by just being nice. I mean, that fundamentally, a couple of things that we have done after you complete an assignment with a vendor, or a vendor has completed something with you, you should always have a follow-up back to them. And one of the things that are like a low-hanging fruit for you to help get more business, if your vendors that you haven't worked with, if you know how formal you are with your business, this could matter. But if you have, let's say, a Google presence, like either a website or a place where they can leave a review,
Oh,
they should be leaving you a review. Absolutely, that will help you spread. It's not just a legitimacy factor like reputation online. There's a lot of algorithms behind the scenes on the technical side that we could go into at some other point, that you get noticed more when people are searching for people in your area, purely
I never
because
thought
they matter.
I never thought to have the vendors review me. I didn't even think of that,
They
dude.
should.
They should 100%.
Yes. Yes.
Unless I was a mean person, then maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
this case, I'm okay that they review me.
Well, and honestly, here's the other thing. We're talking about listings, right? Getting more people, getting more exposure. So once you have great photography and something on a website that's easily shareable, you should be sharing that with the vendors and saying, hey, I'd love for you to share this on your social channel. You did part of this. Thank you for being part of my team. Having them promote that also gets you in front of their circle of influence, which is a big deal as well. So that's
All right.
where Obeo, we've created property websites for that reason. It's to help expand your circle of influence to from the vendors and their circle of influence, using that as a marketing tool.
I like that, dude. So now I just took notes. I'm going to ask all my vendors, all the OBO people I get, like every time I order another set of pictures, be like, dude, I'm gonna just go to you. Be like, hey, can you get me a different person this time? I like the last one, but I need a different review.
Dude, we'll help you grow. We'll help you get your reviews, man.
I mean, dude, we get a lot of listings a month. So that could be multiple. That could be like, this is the hack. This is the hack I was waiting for.
It is. That's a good one. It's a good one.
That's good. All right. Question here. It wasn't on my list originally, but you brought up something and now you mentioned it. And I want to ask you, what can we do better on as real estate agents, brokers, team members, to make sure that in this case, the photographer does a better job, or we make it easy for them? What can we do on this end?
You know, the number one way to make photography easier and that bond and relationship better with your photographer comes down to property preparation for the photo shoot. The most awkward conversations in this industry occur because the property wasn't ready when the photographer arrived. And that's let me define what that means, because that's a big loose term, right? Like, not ready could mean there's garbage everywhere, or it's really just not clean, which we've dealt with before, and we've got to reschedule because it's just, I mean, we can do it, but it's just not going to help. And it can also, on the other end of the spectrum, come to, well, the garbage can was just an oversight. It should have been moved, so it's not in the picture.
Wait. On that, just side note, don't lose your thought. What about toilet seat up, toilet seat down?
Down.
Okay, down.
Down if it's shot at all, but down.
Oh, you heard it here. There you go. No more on LabCoatAgents. Toilet seat up, toilet seat down.
Yeah, no, that is, let's make sure that is clear. It is down 100%.
All right, continue.
So to finish the thought, property preparation is a big deal. When you have a photographer who has scheduled the time to come on site, and this is where there's a little bit of gray area, honestly. Photographers, generally speaking, should not be the stagers. They shouldn't. Like, and there's a liability risk there that you should be understanding if you don't, because if a photographer is moving furniture and doing some pretty big staging things, then that shouldn't be happening. Now, if they need to, like, okay, there's an obvious, the pillow, for example, just is looking weird, and they can like straighten it out, or the curtains were just not balanced appropriately or whatever. There's little things a photographer can and should be helping with to make sure that shot's good, but they shouldn't have to be staging unless you're paying them to stage, right? That's a different thing. But if they're coming in to do photos, then the house should be as photo ready as if you're going to go to a photo shoot yourself and take, maybe they'll like comb your hair a little bit, touch up. That's great. But if they're like, dude, like I've got a shower over here, you just need to go clean up. There's a difference, right? So understanding that balance is a big deal when it comes to photography.
Dude, I mean, you can in essence create a house cleaning company under Obeo and be like, oh, you forgot to clean up the house? Hold on, we got that for you, right? Let me I have a checklist for the best house cleaners. They'll come in 2 hours before.
That's true. Yes. So we help with that a bit on the photography side. Every order that is placed with Obeo, we give you a link that has a really nice checklist that you can share with the customer or with the homeowner. They can just go through bedroom by bedroom and just get it ready for the photo shoot. And we understand, I mean, there's a lot of effort that we are asking for the homeowner to do in order to make it appealing enough, right?
Yeah.
True. And the worst part that, and I know you guys feel the pressure as an agent, right? There's a lot of time and energy to make it photo ready. And then while it's listing, right, when I've got customers I'm going to bring over, potential buyers, please make it look nice, right? Like that is a theme in general for a sell. And it's hard. It's hard, but it's for a photo shoot, you want to make it look really good.
That's a good point, man. I didn't think of these things. That's why I love talking to you. It's like you prompt these other side thoughts that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
So like it totally makes sense. Like, why don't we just arrange the cleanup crew to come in the day of the photo shoot or the night before, right?
Yeah. The night before, and especially if you got kids, right? That makes it a little bit more of a challenge. And I've got 6, man. Like if I were to sell my house today and you were going to say photo shoot is tomorrow, all I'm doing from now until then is trying to kick the kids out of the house so that like they don't destroy what I'm doing.
Dude, you need the cleanup crew to be the same time as a photographer. That's what you need. Like, okay, they cleaned the room, go.
That's so true. That's so true.
Funny, man. I learned in LabCoatAgents of all places that somebody posted like a few days ago that what they do when they take a listing was they make sure that all the light bulbs are the exact same color and wattage. And I'm like, I never thought of that. And then I tell my team, and then my team's like, oh, we already know. I'm like, well, I didn't know. I didn't know.
Light bulb, light
Light
bulb.
bulb, dude. So that would make it a lot easier for a photographer to come in and be like, boom, picture done, all looks sexy, right? Good.
Yeah, and that is the easiest way. I mean, our post-production editing team is amazing. So even if the light bulbs aren't the same, we still get the right colors and the right white balance appropriately. There are tricks to that that we've mastered, so it's not as important. But like a newer photographer, to make it easier for them, yeah, non-Obeo. I'm talking non-Obeo, a new photographer, which
Okay.
let's be honest, you shouldn't be using anyway. You should use Obeo.
You should. Well,
But
dude, because you make it so easy. Like,
yeah,
it's
a
like
lot of it, we
crazy.
try. I mean, the thing is, you have agents have enough on your plate to manage. All of the whole point of this discussion is just leaning into looking at how you manage the different vendors, because it's all vendor based. Almost everybody that you work with is a third party. And so how to manage that a little bit different maybe after this webinar than you did before. Because you can and should have bumpers in that relationship. What are the expectations of communication? What are, and to give you a sense of on our side, we drill it down to there should be a certain time frame when a customer places an order to when our photographer accepts that order. That's a very rigid time frame that we measure. There's another measurement
Ooh.
when they actually have connected with you. That's a totally different measurement, but we measure. There's another one after that, that when they actually have entered a confirmed time and date into our platform. Very, very strict. Another one is after that appointment time, when did they actually give us the photos back so our editing could do the photos? And then the final one on the post-production side, how long did it take you to do the photos, and if they've been uploaded on time? Those, just to give you a little sneak peek under the hood on Obeo side, how we look at managing a vendor relationship. Understand if it's an appraiser, understand what happens after you talk to the appraiser. Are they having to contact the homeowner? And then when do they set an appointment? Like dissect the workflow a bit there, and then just get an idea with that vendor what time expectations should be between each of those junctures. And that helps you just identify what the fulfillment process even is. And then secondly, just put the right bumpers onto how you actually manage the outliers that, oh, this was a little bit out of that. Was that normal or not? And if it's way out, then man, I'm looking for another guy. I should be. It's not worth your brand if you continue.
I agree, man. I agree. All right. Well, I took some notes on this. Thank you for that. And for those of you who joined us for the whole thing, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Again, this is by Obeo. Check them out. If you haven't used them already, there is a special through LabCoatAgents for your first shoot. Do it. You'll be super happy you did. We've done it. Thanks again, man. I appreciate it. And I love the view to your background, by the way.
It's sweet.
It's dude, it tells me it's alive. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.